"Don't make us clean the toilet again," cry the twins, their hands injured and their faces marked by exhaustion. "Please, the smell is unbearable," they beg, as the stepmother, arms crossed, watches in silence. That night, the father arrives early and hears the voices coming from the bathroom. And what he sees makes him freeze. His daughters are on their knees, scrubbing the floor through tears. And in that instant, the truth detonates before his eyes. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of the Harper family home in Millfield, Ohio, casting delicate shadows across the hardwood, floors that 7-year-old Emma and Sophia had learned to keep spotless. The twins moved in synchronized silence, their small hands carefully arranging their school books, while their father, David, bustled around the kitchen, briefcase in one hand, coffee mug in the other. "Girls, Victoria will pick you up from school today. I have that client meeting in Columbus that might run late," David called out, his voice carrying the familiar weight of a man juggling too many responsibilities since his wife Sarah had passed 3 years ago. Emma and Sophia exchanged a quick glance, the kind of wordless communication that only twins possess. It had been 6 months since their father married Victoria Sterling, an elegant woman from the affluent side of town who had swept into their lives like a perfectly orchestrated symphony. Everyone in Millfield spoke of how fortunate David was to find such a devoted wife, how the girls finally had a proper mother figure. Victoria appeared in the doorway, her auburn hair perfectly styled, wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater that probably cost more than most families in Millfield spent on groceries in a month. Her smile was radiant, the kind that made grown-ups pause and take notice. "Good morning, my darlings," she said, her voice honey-sweet as she approached the twins. Her hands landed gently on their shoulders, but Emma felt the subtle pressure of Victoria's fingers, a grip just firm enough to remind them who was in charge. "I trust you both remembered to make your beds exactly as I showed you yesterday." David looked up from his phone, beaming at the domestic scene before him. "You're amazing with them, Vic. I don't know what we'd have done without you." Victoria's smile widened, though something flickered in her green eyes when she looked at the girls. "They're such quick learners, aren't you, girls?" Emma and Sophia nodded in unison, having learned that silence was often the safest response. Mrs. Rodriguez, their longtime housekeeper, who had been with the family since the twins were babies, bustled into the kitchen carrying a basket of laundry. The older Mexican woman's eyes met the girls briefly, and Emma caught a flash of concern before Mrs. Rodriguez quickly looked away. "Eleanor, I've left a list of additional tasks for today," Victoria said, her tone shifting to something cooler, more commanding. "I trust you'll have everything completed before Mr. Harper returns." "This evening." Mrs. Rodriguez nodded, her weathered hands gripping the laundry basket a little tighter. "Of course, Mrs. Harper." David kissed Victoria goodbye, then knelt down to hug his daughters. "Be good for Victoria, okay? I'll be home by dinner." As his car pulled out of the driveway, the atmosphere in the house shifted almost imperceptibly. Victoria's smile remained, but it no longer reached her eyes. She moved to the window, watching until David's silver sedan disappeared around the corner of Maple Street. "Well then," she said, turning back to the twins with that same bright smile, "let's review our morning routine, shall we?" The next hour passed in a blur of inspections. Victoria examined their bedroom with the precision of a military officer, running her finger along surfaces to check for dust, opening dresser drawers to ensure clothes were folded to her exact specifications. Emma watched in growing anxiety as Victoria pulled out one of Sophia's sweaters, refolding it with sharp, deliberate movements. "This is sloppy, Sophia. Attention to detail is what separates successful people from failures in life." Victoria's voice remained pleasant, conversational, as if she were discussing the weather. "Your mother clearly never taught you proper organization." Sophia's lower lip trembled slightly, but she didn't speak. Emma stepped closer to her twin, offering silent support. "I want you both to refold everything in these drawers, every single item. And Emma," Victoria's gaze fixed on the girl with laser focus, "that little stuffed elephant your father gave you needs to be put away. Toys scattered around bedrooms are signs of an undisciplined mind." The elephant had been a gift from their father after their mother's funeral, a small comfort during the darkest period of their young lives. Emma's hands instinctively moved to protect it, clutching it closer to her chest. "But Daddy said—" "Your father says many things when he's feeling sentimental," Victoria interrupted smoothly. "But I'm here to prepare you for the real world, Emma, a world where weakness isn't tolerated." Mrs. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway with fresh linens. Her eyes took in the scene quickly, noting the girls' tense postures and Victoria's commanding stance. "Mrs. Harper, would you like me to help the girls with their room?" the housekeeper offered carefully. "That won't be necessary, Eleanor. The girls need to learn independence, don't you, girls?" Victoria's smile never wavered, but her eyes communicated a clear message. Obedience was not optional. The morning continued with what Victoria called life skills training. The twins were taught to dust baseboards with toothbrushes, to clean windows until they sparkled without a single streak, to arrange flowers in precisely measured heights. Each task came with detailed instructions and immediate criticism, if not performed to Victoria's exacting standards. "Sophia, those roses are uneven. When you do something, you do it right the first time." Victoria's patience seemed infinite, which somehow made her corrections more unsettling than if she had simply yelled. "Start over." As the day wore on, Emma began to notice patterns in Victoria's behavior. The woman was different when Mrs. Rodriguez was nearby, more gentle, more nurturing. But when they were alone, her expectations became impossibly high, her criticisms more frequent. During lunch, Victoria sat across from them at the dining table watching their every bite. "Proper posture, girls. Straight backs, napkins in laps. Your reputations will follow you everywhere you go." Emma tried to sit straighter, but her small frame struggled to maintain the rigid position Victoria demanded. When she slumped slightly, Victoria reached across the table and gently but firmly adjusted her shoulders. "Better. Remember, excellence is a habit, not an accident." After lunch, Victoria introduced what she called quiet reflection time. The twins were to sit in the living room, hands folded, thinking about their behavior and how they could improve. No talking, no fidgeting, no playing. Just sitting and thinking. Emma's mind wandered to her mother, to Sunday mornings when Sarah would make pancakes and let them eat in their pajamas while watching cartoons. Those memories felt like they belonged to different children, not the girls they were becoming under Victoria's careful instruction. When Mrs. Rodriguez passed through the living room, she paused, taking in the sight of the two 7-year-olds sitting motionless on the sofa, like miniature statues. "Perhaps the girls would like to help me in the garden," she suggested gently. "They're learning self-discipline, Eleanor, something that will serve them well in life." Victoria emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. Physical labor comes after mental preparation. Mrs. Rodriguez's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but she nodded and continued toward the laundry room. As the afternoon progressed, Emma began to understand something that filled her with a cold dread. Victoria wasn't trying to be mean. She genuinely believed she was helping them. The conviction in her voice when she spoke about preparing them for the real world, about making them strong, was absolute. This wasn't temporary frustration or bad mood. This was who Victoria was. During afternoon snack time, Sophia accidentally spilled a few drops of apple juice on the pristine white tablecloth. The reaction was swift and measured. Victoria didn't raise her voice or show anger. Instead, she calmly removed the tablecloth and handed Sophia a scrub brush and a bucket of soapy water. "Natural consequences, darling. When we make messes, we clean them up properly. Hand washing will ensure you remember to be more careful next time." Emma watched her sister scrub the fabric with small, determined movements, tears silently streaming down Sophia's face. She wanted to help, to take the brush and do the work herself, but Victoria's steady gaze kept her frozen in place. "Emma, you can help by setting the table again. Use the good china this time. If Sophia had been more careful, we wouldn't need to reset everything. But that's a lesson for another day." As Emma carefully placed the delicate plates around the table, her hands shaking slightly with the fear of breaking something, she began to understand why the house had felt different these past few months. It wasn't just that Victoria had moved in and rearranged their mother's things. It was that she was rearranging them too, piece by piece, rule by rule. When David called that evening to check in, Victoria answered with her usual warmth and charm. "Everything's wonderful, darling. The girls have been absolute angels. We've had such a productive day together, haven't we, girls?" Emma and Sophia stood beside Victoria as she held the phone, and they nodded when she looked at them expectantly. Their father's voice came through the speaker, tired but relieved. "I knew I could count on you, Vic. Tell the girls I love them and I'll see them tomorrow night." "We love you too, Daddy," the twins said in unison, though the words felt strange in their mouths, like they were reading from a script. After dinner, as they prepared for bed, Victoria supervised their nighttime routine with the same attention to detail she brought to everything else. Teeth brushed for exactly 2 minutes, pajamas folded properly before changing, faces washed with specific motions to ensure proper cleanliness. "Tomorrow we'll work on time management," Victoria said as she tucked them into their beds with mathematical precision. 7-year-olds are certainly old enough to understand the importance of efficiency. She turned off the light and closed the door, leaving Emma and Sophia in darkness. They waited, listening to Victoria's footsteps disappear down the hallway, before Sophia whispered into the darkness, "Emma, I miss Mommy." "Me too," Emma whispered back, reaching across the space between their twin beds to find her sister's hand. "But we have to be brave, okay? We have to take care of each other." In the silence that followed, both girls stared at the ceiling, trying to understand why their home didn't feel like home anymore. Outside their window, the streets of Millfield were quiet and peaceful, filled with houses where other children slept soundly, unaware that in the Harper house on Maple Street, 2 little girls were learning that safety was something that could disappear as quietly as it had once existed. Tomorrow would bring new lessons, new expectations, new ways to prove themselves worthy of the love they had once taken for granted. And somewhere in the darkness, Emma began to form the first seeds of a plan that would one day save them both. 3 weeks later, David Harper stood in the foyer of his Millfield home, suitcase in hand, wrestling with an uncomfortable feeling he couldn't quite name. His month-long business trip to oversee the company's new Denver expansion had been planned for months, but something about leaving the girls now made his stomach twist with unease. Victoria appeared at his side, radiant in a navy blue dress that made her green eyes sparkle. "Stop worrying, darling. The girls and I have wonderful plans. This will give us time to really bond as a family." Emma and Sophia stood at the top of the stairs, watching their father prepare to leave. Over the past weeks, Victoria's lessons had intensified, but always in subtle ways that never quite crossed the line into obvious cruelty. The girls had learned to read the microscopic signs of her displeasure, the slight tightening around her eyes, the pause before she spoke, the way her hands gripped objects just a fraction too tightly. "Girls, come say goodbye to your father," Victoria called, her voice carrying that familiar musical quality that made adults trust her instantly. As David hugged his daughters, he noticed their hands felt rough, more calloused than he remembered. "What have you two been up to? Your hands feel like you've been working construction." Victoria laughed, the sound light and carefree. "We've been doing lots of gardening projects, haven't we, girls? I believe in teaching children the value of hard work. It builds character." David nodded approvingly, though something nagged at him. Sarah had always believed in chores for the girls, but their hands had never felt quite so worn. He pushed the thought away, attributing it to his own overprotectiveness. "I'll call every few days to check in," he said, kissing Victoria goodbye. "Take care of my girls." "They're my girls too now, David. I'll take very good care of them." As David's car disappeared down Maple Street, Emma felt her sister's hand slip into hers. They stood at the window watching until even the sound of the engine faded, knowing instinctively that their lives were about to change dramatically. Victoria waited exactly 30 minutes before calling them to the living room. Gone was the warm smile she had worn for their father. In its place was an expression of calm determination that made Emma's blood run cold. "Now that it's just us girls, we can really focus on your development," Victoria began, settling into David's favorite armchair as if claiming it. "Your father means well, but men simply don't understand what it takes to raise strong, capable women. That's where I come in." Mrs. Rodriguez emerged from the kitchen, carrying a tray of cleaned dishes. She paused when she saw the scene, her dark eyes taking in Victoria's commanding posture and the girls' tense bodies. "Mrs. Harper, I was thinking perhaps the girls would enjoy baking cookies this afternoon, a special treat for when Mr. Harper calls tonight." Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. "Eleanor, I've been meaning to discuss your role in this household. The girls have become far too dependent on your assistance. From now on, they'll handle all their own needs. Child-rearing responsibilities fall to me, not the help." The dismissal in Victoria's voice was unmistakable. Mrs. Rodriguez had practically raised these girls, had comforted them through their mother's loss, had been their constant source of stability. Now she was being relegated to nothing more than hired cleaning service. "Of course, Mrs. Harper, but if you need anything—" "I won't. The girls and I understand each other perfectly, don't we?" Emma and Sophia nodded, though neither understood anything about what was happening to their world. The first week without David felt like a month. Victoria instituted what she called efficiency training, which began each morning at 5 a.m. with bedmaking that had to pass military standard inspection. The twins learned to clean bathrooms until every surface gleamed, to organize closets by color and size with mathematical precision, to prepare meals following exact measurements and timing. "Attention to detail is what separates success from mediocrity," Victoria would say, watching them scrub floors with toothbrushes to reach corners. "Your future depends on these lessons." When they made mistakes, and Victoria ensured they always made mistakes, the consequences were swift and educational. A crooked pillowcase meant remaking all the beds in the house. A streak on a window meant cleaning every piece of glass until they sparkled. Victoria never raised her voice, never showed anger. She simply implemented what she called natural learning experiences. Mrs. Rodriguez watched from the periphery, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by growing anxiety. She tried to help when she could, slipping the girls extra snacks when Victoria wasn't looking, offering encouraging words during brief moments alone. But Victoria's monitoring was comprehensive. "Eleanor, I notice you've been hovering around the children quite a bit," Victoria said one afternoon, cornering the housekeeper in the laundry room. "I want to be very clear about expectations. Any interference in my parenting methods will result in immediate termination. I trust I'm making myself understood." Mrs. Rodriguez nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she folded towels. She had worked for families throughout Millfield for 30 years, but she had never encountered someone like Victoria Harper. The woman's cruelty was so carefully calibrated, so systematically implemented, that it was almost impossible to prove. By the second week, Emma had begun keeping a secret diary, hidden inside an old teddy bear that had belonged to their mother. Each night, after Victoria's final room inspection, Emma would carefully record what had happened: the hours spent cleaning, the meals they had missed for inefficiency, the treasured items that had been confiscated for encouraging weakness. Her 7-year-old handwriting was shaky but determined as she wrote, "Tuesday. Victoria made Sophia clean the kitchen floor 4 times because she saw a crumb. Sophia cried, but tried to be quiet. I helped when Victoria went upstairs. We are very tired, but we have to be strong." The entries grew more detailed as the days passed. Friday, Victoria threw away Mommy's jewelry box that we kept in our room. She said dead people shouldn't influence living children. Sophia threw up after dinner, but Victoria said it was because we ate too fast. Mrs. Rodriguez tried to help, but Victoria sent her home early. During the 3rd week, Victoria's methods intensified. The girls were awakened at 4 a.m. for what she called character-building exercises, cleaning gutters, organizing the garage, scrubbing outdoor furniture until their small hands bled from the rough work. When they showed signs of exhaustion, Victoria would lecture them about mental weakness and the importance of pushing through physical limitations. "Successful people don't give up when things get difficult," she would say, watching them struggle with tasks designed for adults. "Your mother clearly never taught you about perseverance, but I will." Mrs. Rodriguez had reached her breaking point. She watched the transformation of the vibrant, playful children she had helped raise into quiet, fearful shadows of themselves. Their laughter had disappeared entirely, replaced by nervous glances and whispered conversations. Their small bodies showed signs of chronic fatigue, and their spirits seemed to shrink a little more each day. Unable to confront Victoria directly without losing her job, and thus any ability to help the girls, Mrs. Rodriguez made a desperate decision. Late one evening, she sat at her kitchen table and wrote an anonymous letter to David Harper, describing in careful detail what she witnessed daily in his house. She mailed it to his Denver hotel, praying it would reach him in time. David received the letter on a Thursday morning. The anonymous handwriting described scenes that seemed impossible. His daughters working from dawn until dusk, being denied meals as punishment, sleeping only a few hours each night. The letter writer claimed Victoria was systematically breaking down the girls' spirits under the guise of education and discipline. His immediate reaction was disbelief. Victoria was perfect with the children, everyone said so, but as he read the letter again, certain phrases nagged at him. The rough hands he had noticed, the way the girls had seemed smaller somehow when he left, the subtle changes in their behavior over the past months. When he called the house that evening, Victoria answered with her usual warmth, but something in her tone struck him as performative. The girls said their usual polite hellos, but their voices lacked the natural enthusiasm he remembered. "How are my girls really doing, Vic? They sound tired." "Oh, you know how children can be dramatic. We've been working on some projects together, and they're learning that accomplishment requires effort. They're actually thriving under proper structure." David's unease grew. The letter had mentioned excessive work, exhaustion, rigid schedules. Victoria's explanation seemed to echo those very concerns, while dismissing them as positive development. On Friday evening, Emma managed to call her father while Victoria was in the shower. The phone call lasted less than 30 seconds before Victoria emerged and firmly but gently took the phone away, explaining that the girls needed to respect adult conversation time. But David had heard enough. Quiet sobbing, the sound of running water in the background, and Emma's whispered words, "Daddy, please come home. We need you." David Harper abandoned his meetings, caught the next flight to Columbus, and drove through the night back to Millfield. What he found when he arrived home at dawn would haunt him for the rest of his life. He entered quietly through the front door and followed the sound of running water to the main floor bathroom. There he discovered his 7-year-old daughters on their hands and knees, scrubbing the tile floor with brushes meant for outdoor use. Their small hands were bleeding from the rough work, their faces streaked with tears and exhaustion. They moved like mechanical dolls, repeating the same motions over and over. "It has to be perfect," Sophia whispered to Emma. "She said it has to be perfect, or we can't stop." Victoria stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching their work with apparent satisfaction. When she noticed David, she smiled brightly. "Darling, you're early. The girls and I were just finishing up their morning routine. I've been teaching them the importance of thoroughness." David stared at the scene, his children bleeding, exhausted, working with the desperate efficiency of prisoners. The bathroom floor was already spotless, had probably been spotless for hours, but they continued scrubbing because they had been told they couldn't stop. "Girls," he said softly, kneeling beside them, "you can stop now, Daddy's here." Emma and Sophia looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much, learned too much about the cruelty that adults could disguise as love. They fell into his arms, finally allowing themselves to cry openly, to release weeks of suppressed fear and pain. Mrs. Rodriguez appeared behind Victoria, her face wet with tears of relief. "Mr. Harper, thank God you came home." As David held his daughters, he noticed details that painted a horrifying picture. Weight loss, dark circles under their eyes, hands that looked like they belonged to adult laborers, not 7-year-old children. The house was immaculate beyond reason, every surface polished to an impossible shine, achieved through the forced labor of 2 little girls. Victoria watched the reunion with calm detachment. "I don't understand the dramatics, David. I've been preparing them for real life. The world won't coddle them the way you do." "Get out," David said quietly, still holding his daughters. "Get out of my house and never come back. Victoria's composure finally cracked. "I was saving them from weakness, making them strong. You'll ruin them with your softness." But David wasn't listening anymore. He was focused entirely on his children, on the months of damage that would need to be healed, on the trust that would need to be rebuilt. The authorities were called. Victoria left Millfield that same morning, her perfect facade finally crumbling as neighbors whispered about what had really been happening in the Harper house. She faced no criminal charges, but the court of public opinion in small-town Ohio was perhaps a more lasting punishment. 6 months later, the Harper family had found a new rhythm. David had restructured his work to be home more often, understanding finally that presence mattered more than financial success. Mrs. Rodriguez had become more than a housekeeper. She was family, the grandmother figure the girls needed. Emma still kept a diary, but now it recorded different kinds of days. "Today, Daddy taught us to make pancakes and we made a huge mess and it was okay. Sophia laughed so hard she snorted milk through her nose. Mrs. Rodriguez said Mommy would have loved seeing us happy again." The scars on their hands had faded, but more importantly, the light had returned to their eyes. They were learning to trust again, to play again, to believe that love didn't require perfection. The house on Maple Street became truly peaceful for the first time in almost a year. And if sometimes Emma woke from nightmares about impossible cleanliness standards and cold green eyes, she knew now that her father was just down the hall, and Mrs. Rodriguez was in the guest room, and no one would ever hurt her or Sophia again. The twins grew up knowing that survival could be a shared endeavor, that protecting each other was the most important lesson anyone could learn, and that real love came without conditions or performance requirements. On sunny afternoons, when the three of them sat in the garden Mrs. Rodriguez had helped them plant, David would watch his daughters play and remember that the most important job any parent has is simply to be present, to see and to protect the innocence that Victoria had tried so hard to steal. Dear listeners, we hope Emma and Sophia's story has touched your hearts as deeply as it has touched ours. Like these brave sisters, we all have stories that deserve to be heard, families that deserve to be protected, and bonds that deserve to be cherished. If this tale of resilience and redemption moved you, we invite you to explore more stories of human courage in our special playlist. You can find it by clicking on the link to your left. These stories remind us that love always finds a way to triumph over cruelty, and that sometimes the strongest people come in the smallest packages. Please subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed Emma and Sophia's journey, and give this video a like to help us share these important stories with others who need to hear them. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one and treasure your insights about these powerful human experiences that connect us all.